Guys, today we are looking at Clayxels, and by the end of this video you guys will be developing something that looks like this, and a little kind of concept that looks like this. Just shooting a bunch of balls over, you can see them blending into each other, which is really cool. So yeah, let's get to it, but first I would like to give a shout out and a huge thank you to Yazoo Zay, who has been a subscriber of this channel for a while now. He has designed this logo for me and I just cannot express how impressed I am at this design, and bro, I just cannot thank you enough, man. I know you'll be watching this video, and guys, if you need a good graphics designer, give him a shot. Guys, I'm very excited about this. This is Clayxels, which I'm going to be reviewing today and testing out, just doing my own thing. I've had this, I bought this, must be over a year ago probably, and it's just been sitting around waiting to be tested out, and yeah, just haven't had the time. It's $60 and I can assure you guys this is well worth it, as you will soon see. Okay, so $60, you'll see there's a lot of 5-star reviews, 47 reviews. So look, if there's more than 20 reviews on an item and you've got a 5-star rating, I'll say that's quite a good indication. That's what I use usually. Well, if there's enough reviews, but of course if there isn't, what I will do is have a look at the videos. You'll see there's some awesome videos that the author has put together. And I'm not going to go through all of them now, that's just going to waste time, but I can assure you that you'll be quite impressed. So what this does, you can model right inside Unity, and your end result kind of looks like clay figures, although you can do more detailed sculptures in it, like this picture you can see. I'll go through the demos in a bit and I'll show you some more examples. But anyway, like I was saying, so that's usually a good indication, 47 reviews, yeah. But if it doesn't have enough reviews, then go and check out the overview, see if it has a big enough description. What I can see right here is this is a sculpting tool. Sculpt right inside Unity without complex mesh operations. It uses a different way of rendering or creating your models, which kind of goes over my head, but that's not what I'm interested in. All I'm interested in is what this thing can do for me, right? Everything stays interactive, and I'll show you what that means in a bit. Fast level designs. I don't know if you'll use this for level designs. From what I can see, it's more for creating like little models, but yeah, I don't know, maybe you can use it for level design. Maybe you'll try it out. Export to FBX. Okay, you can use this in other external programs like Blender, Maya, whatever it is. But I don't see why you will want to buy this package and then use it in something else. That just goes against the whole point of this tool. Okay, anyway, Clayxels works with plain simple points. Okay, point cloud is, yeah, you guys can look it up. It doesn't use the existing or the usual model of using what do you call it, meshes and points, vertices to render your objects. So this looks quite expensive, and he does mention it is very expensive computationally. So you can use it in the editor or your runtime. Works with standard colliders, or you can create your own. Okay. Open C# code. Okay, so the code is available for you, so we are going to check it out as well. Extend or hack the provided APIs. Hey, so this is interesting. I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to play around with the APIs and see what it's like. Write new shaders. I'm not going to write shaders. I hate shaders. I'll use other people's shaders, but I've tried writing my own shaders. I hate it. All the mathematical function I expose, and yeah, okay, I'm not gonna go down that road. Current limitations. Okay, you need a GPU. Mobile targets are not supported unless you have everything baked. WebGL is not a supported target. Okay, so you're basically looking at PCs or consoles, from what I gather. Okay, so just keep in mind it does have like very serious limitations here. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, so next step, once you've bought it, if you are buying it, just import it into your project. It's just the usual way you import something into your project from the asset store. And go to assets. It'll be under Clayxels, unless you've changed the location. And I want to have a look at the documentation. So you've got a Twitter account, Discord server, which looks like that's where you'll get some good ideas and where the developer actually does his support. Give you a brief introduction, how to get started, creating your first models, some tips and tricks. This is nice. He actually gives a link to someone else's YouTube channel. So I had a look at this and it looks like he does mostly just sculpting of objects, which is great. So I'm not going to do the same kind of thing here. Okay, so when I looked at some of the existing videos here, it looks like people are just doing sculpting. So, and I want to do something at runtime. Okay, so freezing to mesh, exporting FBX files, you can do that here. Okay, that's fine. Animating using the Unity animator. Some optimization tricks, which is nice. Baking files, programming. Okay, so clay container, clay object.cs, that's the ones we are going to be using, and figure out how to get this thing working at runtime. Okay, rest of this, some experimental stuff, what to do on Mac and whatever. Let's go back to assets, Clayxels, and see what examples they've got. So you'll see they have quite a bit of examples here. Examples built in HDRP, URP. We're just going to check the standard ones. Import that. And let's see. Okay, so this is a built-in, ready, sculpted model that they've got here, which they use 2 containers for and a bunch of stuff to create this thing. Quite a few pieces of clay, as we will see in a bit how that's done. Foliage. Okay, this is a cool little tree they've got going on there. Obviously got a nice little what do you call it, shader for this. Example tune. What does this actually look like when you play it? Okay, just a model. Particles. Taking a while to start up. Oh, okay, that is very slow. Even on my PC, this thing is going down to under 20 frames a second. It looks really cool, but obviously not practical. Procedural anims. Let's see what this is about. Okay, so what I think they're doing is just creating animations within Unity itself. So you can see these look like real stop motion type models and animations. The animations aren't all that, but it's cool for a little casual game, I think. Okay, this is a bit more on texturing, detail sculpting. So over here you can see you can actually create some really nice looking models, which is awesome. So I mean, to do something like this using Blender is going to take you forever and ever. And this here, I think this is, oh, okay, so example instancing is the name of the scene. So I guess it's just to show how what the performance is like when you have many of these things at once. So I'm getting around 200 frames a second, which isn't great considering there's not much on the screen. And okay, they all kind of went into each other. Okay, and become one blob. Okay, that's all for the examples. So let's get started with doing our own thing. Right click, 3D object, Clayxels container, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Add clay. Cool. So we have our first object, and I just want to show you guys something quickly. So there's limited space in which this will render. Okay, I don't think you guys can see this, but there's a little bounding box here. I know there's a way to change this. Where do we do this again? There's a color somewhere. Global config. And bounds color. I'm going to change that to what? White. Let's change that to white. I don't know if I can change the thickness. Doesn't look like it. Okay, I hope you guys can see that now. So there's this white bounding box. So if I take this cube and move it up, you'll see it disappear once it's outside of the bounding box. So it only will render this cube inside that. Just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to zoom in and let's see. So the first thing is a cube. You can change it to sphere, cylinder, torus. Cool. Curve. With the curve you can make that longer. So let's see, there's the slide, so the slope. Weight to one side or the other. And how fat it can be. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be using this. Hexagon. Okay, this is one of my favorites. This is annoying me. Just 1 second. Window. Rendering, lighting. Just bake this quickly. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we have our object and let's change the color a bit. Make it like a dark red. Cool. Okay, hexagon. One of my favorite shapes. Prism. Okay, cool. Let's just work with let's go back to cube and test out a few settings. So you can change roundness. You can see the edges changing over there. Okay, it gets to a point where it's actually a sphere and then kind of collapses on itself. Kind of like a diamond kind of thing. Okay, maybe that's a bit too much. Let's leave it about there. That looks quite nice. Let's just duplicate that and move that up a bit. Okay, so this cube at the bottom, just move it to the bottom. I'm going to change the color a bit. Let's make this a greenish color. Now something you'll notice here is that it's blending. This is really, really cool. Okay, so we can change the shape here. Let's change this to a cylinder. See, oh, that looks so cool. And you can change the amount it blends. Okay, there's this blend setting here, so I can change it to 0, and then you can see it's like a very sharp edge there. And as you change the blend settings up, you'll see that blends more and more. Let's just leave it about there, 50-ish. Let's make that 50 on the dot. Okay, the bottom one I can change the roundness as well. Cone. Okay, so that's, you can make that the cone if you want to. Okay, so that's offset and spline. Ooh, okay, that's interesting. I'm just going to leave it as single and just do some simple test here with this. If you guys want to see more about these other options, I can make another video about it, but right now let's just keep it simple. Keep it simple for now until I get to the scripting part. That's what I'm actually interested in, is hacking this, get it to do Something that the developer probably hasn't thought of himself. Maybe. So that looks cool. Maybe a bit too dark. Can't see the blending now. Okay. So you can see, so the bottom part, if I go to the top one and change blending here, you'll see nothing will actually happen. Okay. It only affects the object beneath that. Beneath that in the hierarchy. Okay, so there you can see the blending will work, and if I add another object, I'm just going to Control D on that, change that to what, a torus, a bit down a bit to the left. Oh, this is so cool. You can see you can make some really complex shapes very quickly here. Let's make this blue. You know, this blending effect just gets me. That is just the coolest thing ever. Okay, fatness on that. Okay, you see that removes the thickness of that whole round. Okay, obviously not going to have any impact there, and slice doesn't seem to be doing anything. Okay, just going to save this, and I think I'm going to duplicate this again. Let's make this hexagon. Okay, now this is also a really cool feature, and you'll see here it has add and subtract. So if I click sub, let's see what happens. That shape actually removes whatever it's in touch with. So it's invisible, but it removes its actual shape from the objects above it. So let's just make it smaller. You can see that a bit better, or not. But you can see as I move it up and down, it's the actual hexagon shape that's being cut out of it. If I hit on add again, it brings it back. It's cool. If I click on torus, I can do that in any point in the hierarchy, and that will work fine. Okay, something you have to keep in mind is that these objects and any effects that you add to it affects the objects above it, but not below. So if I take this torus, for example, and the hexagon is below it, and when I say below it, I mean below it in the hierarchy. Okay, so if I take the torus and click on subtract, it's going to affect everything above it, which is the cylinder and cube in this case. So take the torus and move it around. See, it affects those, but it will not affect the hexagon in this case, unless I move the hexagon above it. Now if I take my torus and move it across to the hexagon, now it has an effect. And the same thing goes for blending. Blending will only work for any objects above it. I want to play around with animation next, but firstly I just want to press play here while it's doing nothing. And have a look at my FPS. So if you just press stats, I can see my frames per second, which is about 900, 1000 frames a second at the moment. So I'm just going to stop it now and then start animating. So I'm going to click on my Clayxel container, click on animator, window, animation, animator. I always get this confused. Window, animation, animation. Okay, I'm going to dock this at the bottom. And just add some animation. Okay, great first, and I'm gonna call this Clayxel test anim. Okay, let's grab the cylinder and start recording. Okay, so they're all in the beginning. Let's go to about 30. This a bit. That way. Let's grab the hexagon, move you up a bit, and torus, move you that way. Okay, very simple animation we got going. Save this, we can stop. Press play now. Let's see the effect that has. Animation is not playing. That's because we have this animator controller that's been created for us. is going to our test anim. Is it not playing? Okay, I remember what the issue is now. You have to click on Clayxel container and there is this option, animate force update. You need to click that. Then and only then will it actually play. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in here. And okay, you can see the effect that had. So we just have a few objects being animated. And already the frame rate has gone down drastically. It's now on 90 frames a second, whereas before it was on something like 900 frames a second. So you can see that this is not really meant to be used like this. But I've got some ideas in my head. I just want to play around with, so we'll get to that in a bit. And yeah, so I think if you're doing this kind of thing, animating with Clayxels, you have to keep it to a bare minimum. And it's a bit unfortunate because this seemed like the more attractive thing to me, being able to do this in real time, as opposed to just sculpting and plunking your objects in. But I know that they mentioned in the documentation that you can bake the animations as well and basically just create an asset out of it and then plunk it in. But I don't think it's going to have the same effect. I think you'll have the animations playing, but you're not going to be able to like create moving platforms or these nice blending that's going on over here. So yeah, but like I said, I do have an idea on something that can possibly still work, just keeping the animations down a bit. But before we get to that, anything else I can think of? I think that's all I wanted to test out, is basically just basic sculpting with this thing and seeing how this affects performance if we use animation with this. So yeah, next thing is scripting. I want to get to and figure out some of the scripting and kind of hack this thing a bit. So let's get down to that. Okay, let's go to scenes. I'm going to create a new scene here. Okay. Scene 1. Let's go to 3D object, Clayxel container. And here's what I want to do. I want to just get these things spawning in a script and moving around and see what effect we get. So if I click on a container, there was a way to view this thing to maybe just add something, add clay. Oh, there we go. Now it displays, and I'm going to add a sphere in rather. Whoops, I don't know why I did that. Add clay, change that to sphere over here. And color, let's make it green. Okay, you'll see these settings are there no matter what. So obviously the roundness doesn't matter for a sphere. That at 0. What is slice? Slice also doesn't matter here by the looks of it. Might work for something. Just leave it back to 0. And the blend, I'm going to put it up to about 75-ish. Okay. Now this I'm going to use as my base, and I'll start scripting this. But what I want to do is add something from the bottom that's kind of going to shoot these things out. So let's create an empty. I'm going to call you shooter. And go back to assets, create a folder for your scripts. And create a shooter script. C# script shooter. Okay, so that's going to take a game object that we're going to be instantiating. So serialize field, so it shows up in the inspector. Private game object and projectile, I guess. And we need a reference to the actual container. think. So Clayxel container. And let's think about this. So every few seconds we'll get this thing to shoot something. So what I'm going to do is in the start method just call a coroutine. So start coroutine shoot. You can go over there, hit Alt Enter, generate method. Now that's what I don't like about this generating in Visual Studio. You have to go in, change to IEnumerator. It doesn't set up the return type properly for you. And I'm going to say while true, infinite loop, and yield return new. Wait for seconds. Let's see. Time to wait. Let's make that a variable. Alt Enter. If the variable does not exist already, generate a field. And we want to serialize this so it shows up in the editor. Okay, cool. So this is gonna wait for however many seconds. Why is this whining? It's whining because it's the same name as our class. Okay. Which is actually not what I wanted to call it. I think that was an autocomplete fail. And okay, so what we want to do is instantiate an object. So game object, new projectile equals instantiate using the projectile object that we are going to be passing in, and I think that's about it for now. Let's test it out and see what happens. I did not add my script onto this thing. Shooter. Okay. Time to wait. Let's make this 0.5. So it's fast enough. Clayxel container, which we're not using yet, but we will. And you are our root object. Okay, so since we are using this, and I don't think I showed you guys this yet, but if you take your anything that's in this bounding box, I did show this to you. If you move it out, it disappears. Okay, so I'm just going to move this out of view so that we can see what's actually spawning at the right spot. And it's spawning but not showing up. Is my shooter in the right place? It's hard to tell. Well, I think it is. Okay, you can see nothing is happening. Okay, so it looks like Clayxels isn't quite set up to be usable in scripts just right out of the box. So that's why I said, we're gonna have to hack this thing to get it working. So let's have a look here. Okay, so we have our projectile being created, and I'm having a look here at the sphere, and I can see there's a script on it. Okay, clay object. If we open that up, this is what I noticed when I was going through this, is there's these lines of code over here. Force update and schedule component object scan. If we copy that, go back to our shooter. Okay, firstly, another thing I have to point out is that your Clayxels will only, or your clay objects will only work if they a child of your Clayxel container. So that's something I did not do. New projectile dot transform dot parent equals Clayxel. container.transform. Okay, so that's going to create it under our Clayxel container, and I want to make sure we're creating it in the correct position as well. So the position of this object that the script is under, which in our case is our little shooter object. So I'm going to create it in that position. So equals transformed position. The position over here as well. Okay, now we have to add that code that I copied. Okay, so instead of this force update, we need to do it on our Clayxel object, which is our new projectile. We need to get the clay object off of that. Clay object components. Oops. So new projectile dot get components clay object force update, and do the same thing over here. Okay, ideally I should have just created a variable here for this, but since we're just mucking about, I'm going to leave it and just test this quickly. Let's see what happens. Okay, come on. Okay, please work. Ah, there we go. You can see it spawning and it's like kind of all in the same place. That's why it looks a bit weird. Well, we can test it out properly if we just click on scene and move our if I can click on the shoot while it's moving around. Whoops. Okay, got our shooter. As I move it around, it is creating it wherever this is. That's the bounds of our bounding box, but okay. Cool, this looks good. Now let's get this thing moving around and bouncing about. So firstly, our clay object. Let's add a component on here. We need a rigid body. And don't use gravity. Add component. Collider. Collider. Sphere collider, of course. Cool. Okay, firstly, let's just go back here to our clay. We added a sphere collider, but we want it to be a bit smaller than the actual object. The reason for that is so that we can see the objects blending into each other. So I made it about what, 3/4 of the size of the sphere. Now let's see. Let's make this move. So what we want is a rigid body. So we have our new projectile dot get component rigid body. Okay, this will be more efficient to do in start method, but whatever. We are just mucking about, as I said. Okay, so rigid body. Add force, add force, and we want it what to transform the up times speed, projectile speed, which is a variable that doesn't exist yet, and we are going to go Alt Enter, generate field, and serialize field, not serializable. Oh, whoops, it's not what I wanted to do. That's supposed to be a float, not the vector 3. Okay, so let's go and test this out. So now shooter, I'm going to change projectile speed to 20. I don't know if that's going to be enough. Ooh. Okay, cool. That's definitely doing something, but they're all spawning inside each other. That's where we're having this weird effect of them going off in opposite directions. The colliders are being created within each other, and the physics engine gets confused. So let's change that up a bit. Okay, so we shoot her. Let's change time to wait to about 2. So I can control this a bit since I haven't added any input control yet. I'm just going to go to scene and move this around. Okay. Seems a bit slow. Let's change it to 40. 80. Let's leave it at 80 for now, because I still need to make these things bounce around. And to do that, we need to go back to project assets. I'm just going to do it here in this root folder. Since there's only going to be one physics material I'm going to be using. This thing. Here we go. Friction change both to 0 for dynamic and static, and bounciness change to 1. Friction combined we want minimum, which probably won't make any difference, but anyway. And bounce combined we want maximum. And now what we want to do is add some borders to this thing. So let's see, how big is this? Say the scale is 1, 1, 1, but how does that compare? This doesn't really translate to unity units. If I make a cube, that cube is 1 by 1 by 1, so that container is definitely not a unity unit. So let's just grab this cube, moving up a bit. Ooh, this is going to be irritating. Okay, so I have to keep clicking on this Clayxel container and clicking on my cube to figure out the dimensions. So I'm gonna resize this that away. Seems like it's just over, which is fine. I'm going to Control D, duplicate that, move that down. Where's the setting? Quite a bit down. Just click on orthographic view, which is great for aligning stuff. Slightly more up, and we can narrow this. Just do both of them at the same time. And on the x-axis, take that down. Okay, that seems fine. Now we can duplicate this. Change the scale on x to 1 and y. Let's move it just underneath that and increase y a bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. Control D and move that to the right. Okay, now on our clay sphere, what we need to do is freeze our position for Z. And that's it. Just so that it doesn't go back and forth, we just want it to stay kind of within the bounds of that rectangle, and you can see it's gonna move that there so that it can bounce along those walls. Okay, great. Now on these walls we need to put our physics materials. So I've got all of them selected, so I can just click and drag it on here. It's on the collider, and that goes there. And on our sphere itself, there's a sphere collider. Just drag that physics material there, save it, press play. Let's see. Okay, it's not bouncing. Probably not moving fast enough. Let's make this 200. Ah, there we go. passing along. Cool. They kind of get stuck on the corners there. That's usually the case when using box colliders. Stuff tends to get stuck. Let's remove this. Remove the box collider. And let's add capsule colliders onto these things. This is going to be fun resizing this. Okay, select the top and bottom ones. Jeez, yeah, those two. Okay. Height. Okay, height's down already. Radius, I'm going to take down. There's an orientation. Oh, there we go. We want it on the x-axis. So radius, height, cool. That fits better. Whoops. Need that radius down ever so slightly. Cool. Now let's select the side walls, remove. What did I do? Okay, sidewalls. That actually seems fine. See if that makes a difference with those objects getting stuck or not. Yeah, seems to be better. Nothing's really going to the corners though. There's one there at the bottom. Was stuck, but they don't seem to be getting stuck as often. This one's stuck, but I think the collider is just a bit off to the right. Let's bring it more to the left. Okay, if they get stuck, I'm not going to worry about it too much. What I want to see is what happens when we have a lot of these things. And I think if I do it this way, it's going to take forever and ever. Okay, so let's go back here to Claysphere. Resize. Make this a bit bigger. Our shooter, let's make it 0.5. Projectile speed 300. Okay, so now this should go all over the place. Cool. Oh, that looks cool. But too fast as they go in colliding to each other. So let's bring this down to 100. Because our bounciness is so high, they're going to really pick up speed quickly. So I might need to change their bounciness down as well. So let's just have a look here. Oh, that looks funky. Like a big blob. What we should do is randomize the actual colors that's been generated here. Let's see. So we can get the clay object, and I know you can set the color on this thing. Can I just set it directly? Okay, on Unity Engine .random, you can actually select a random color HSV. Okay, that will assign a random color to these things. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, cool. I just like the way they blend together. Yeah, that looks really, really cool. You know, this kind of reminds me of that bubble game where you have to shoot bubbles on top and get the similar colors and that kind of thing. Maybe we can kind of do a little proof of concept. I don't want to build a whole game, but let's see if we can kind of get something like that going. Just a few colors and shoot them up to the top, get them to stick together, that kind of thing. And then I'll call it a day. I'm going to keep this scene as is, duplicate it, and not scene 1, 2, but just scene 2. Okay. Got scene 2 open. I'm going to go back to assets, scripts, and shooter. I'm going to duplicate as well. Let's call this shooter 2. And your class name must match your file name. Okay. What I'm going to do here is keep this the same, but add in some keyboard input. So let's just see here. Okay, so this is just going to shoot, and I'm going to create another script rather. For shooter, okay. Let's call this move. Our shooting is complicated enough as it is, so let's just keep everything all in one place. So movement, we want to rotate only. And let's just think about this. Okay, so we have our shooter. I'm going to do some organizing here. Create empty, call this walls. Move these there. Out of my way. Shooter. I'm going to add a tag here. Let's just make it red so I can see where this thing is. Okay, let's make like a fake kind of turret looking thing. Capsule. Resize this thing a bit. That looks weird. Cube. Okay, very simple looking thing. We want this thing rotating. What do we call this? Turret, yes. Because the whole thing is a turret as it is, I can't just call it a cube. I'm just gonna rename it back to cube. Okay. Shooter, this cube needs to go above it so that it rotates from the bottom. So in other words, if I take this thing and rotate it, it rotates like that. Cool, that looks good. Let's just zero the rotations here again. Move this down a bit. Okay, and now the point at which we are actually shooting, let's call that spawn point, projectile spawn point. And instead of having our shooter on that, we're going to move it to our projectile spawn point. So you can actually drag and drop from here onto another object here. And that moves your script. So it's no longer on here. We have moved it onto our projectile spawn point. And let's see how that works. That's not working too well because our cube has a collider which we are going to remove or disable. Our projectile spawn point we actually want on top. That was the whole point of creating it separately, so that we can just move it up a bit onto the nose. Okay. Shit. I'm going to change a few settings. Time to wait, I'm going to make that 2 seconds. And projectile speed, let's take it down to 50. And resize this one. Resize it. Make it smaller and move you out of the way. Okay, that's moving in the right direction as I'm rotating this thing. Now I need keyboard input. So instead of controlling from the scene, I can actually control it in game. And what we want is we want float. What's it? Horizontal. Equals input dot get axis horizontal. If you are following along with this, just remember this horizontal you put in here is case sensitive as well, so it must be a capital H. And we want to rotate, so this is going to be on our base over here, so that's the main thing that's moving, and we are rotating it around the z-axis. So transform.rotate, we are going to specify an axis over here. Transform.forward, which will equate to our z-axis, and angle will be this horizontal value that's passed in. I think we might need to slow it down, so let's just add in a speed value over here. Float speed equals, let's make it 1 for now. Serialize field. Okay, well, it's not 100% necessary, but yeah, old habits, good habits. Okay. Play. Doesn't seem to be picking up my arrows. Our move script isn't on here. Most common mistake, or the one I always make. Oh, whoops. It's moving in the wrong direction. It's very sensitive. Okay, so firstly, when I'm pressing left, it's moving clockwise. So I'm just gonna do that, put a minus there, and it's too fast. I'm gonna multiply that by speed, and we'll actually lower that in the editor. Let's make it 0.3. Cool, that's more manageable. Not gonna go all crazy, and this thing will obviously rotate through the floor there. I'm not gonna add in checks for that. Cool, they are moving too slowly, so where's our shooting speed? Projectile speed, we'll make that 200, let's see. Much better. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, as soon as it collides with something, as soon as one of these balls collides with something, then we are going to stop them and remove a few components. So to get it to work, let's see. On our ball, we're creating it from this guy, which you cannot see because it's outside of this Clayxel container. We will need, when it collides with something, we will need it to remove the rigid body. Just a rigid body. So let's add a script onto this guy. So we'll call this I think there's already a clay game object in the Clayxels stuff, so let's just call it my clay. Going into creating namespaces and stuff, so I'm just taking the easy way out there. So I don't need start and update. What I need is on collision enter. So if it collides with anything, it must stop. That's it. So what we do is we get the rigid body of this component. So rigid body equals get component, not in quotes, get component. Hate it doesn't actually put the diamonds in for you. And the way you remove a component is you just call destroy. Destroy with that component, rigid body. Now it should stop bouncing around as soon as it hits the walls. Oh, I left it in there. And I did not add my script again. Let's move you out of the way first. Add my clay onto this guy. All the other objects are being created from him. Haha, it worked. Okay, now I feel it's too slow. 0.5, let's make this fast. Oh, that looks cool. Actually build something here. This could be a nice sort of a build it type of game. Okay, this is really awesome. And you know what, guys, I'm going to stop here, otherwise it's going to be all night. If you guys are interested in me taking this a bit further and actually making a game out of this, let me know. Otherwise, I will review another asset in time, and I'm not sure what exactly next. I was thinking about Gaia, but there's a million tutorials on Gaia out there. So if you guys want me to review something else, look, I've got a million assets I've downloaded over the years as well, so I'll go through them and see. I think Archimetics was a nice one that I've used before and I've used in a game. So if you guys don't have any suggestions, I think I'm gonna go with Archimetics. Okay guys, until next time, that was a bit of fun. I quite enjoyed it. And yeah, until next time, enjoy. So yeah, all in all, I think this is an awesome asset, and I think very worth it for the price and for what it does. Look, you know, if you're creating your own models and stuff and you've tried learning Blender, you'll understand it. You know, it's not a walk in the park. So for what this gives you, you know, the whole clay-like look, I think that is really awesome. Just wanted to check one more thing. So it looks like the frame rate really goes down when the objects are interacting with each other. So animating while the animation is actually happening. So you can see here the frame rate is still quite high. Okay, it's staying within 300-400 frames a second as I'm shooting these things out. It does drop a bit down to 100 frames a second at points. But yeah, but I think I could actually make this into an actual game and keep it reasonably performant. Obviously, you can't use this on mobiles. It's in the documentation or WebGL, unfortunately. But yeah, as a standalone game, I think this could work quite nicely. So yeah, anyway, guys, you can see here once it stops shooting and interacting, the frame rate is back up to about 800. Cheers, guys. Enjoy.